Hello friends. Last night, I had the honor of opening Brandon Taylor's UK book tour with a conversation at Brixton House Theatre in London. I first encountered Brandon's soaring and rigorous talent, like most of us, when his debut novel Real Life landed at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. And, like most of us, I have watched with a great deal of pride as his star and stature have risen in the years since. In our conversation today, we explore how the pandemic that changed the world changed him, his craft, and his characters, how the attention economy that sprouted as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic continues to alter and augment the very fiber of our being, and the embodied and artistic practices that embolden him towards creative adventure, as he considers whether or not Minor Black Figures is his final novel.
Would you call Raisin in the Sun a naturalistic play?
I would not.
And what would you call it if you had to put a
I
label on
hope
it?
that it is genuine realism.
What's the difference?
It's enormously different. Well, naturalism tends to take the world as it is and say, this is what it is, this is how it happens. It is true because we see it every day in life that way. You know, you simply photograph the garbage can.
Mm-hmm.
And realism, I think the artist who is creating the realistic work imposes on it not only what is, but what is possible, because this is part of reality too, so that you get a much larger potential of what man can do. And it requires much greater selectivity. You don't just put everything that seems, you put what you believe is.
Like all Black artists, Brandon is subject to the expectations and limitations of the cultural and sociopolitical environments that make Blackness and the Black person a thing. And so too is he subject to the expectations of a reader like myself, who cannot read about the COVID-19 pandemic without feeling haunted by what Jafari S. Allen calls the long 1980s. So we also explore the creative power of world building within literature, how Brandon writes characters who speak to a past that can't always be named, and what our beliefs about the role of the Black artist in society say about what we hope our artists can do, both in our wild and voluptuous interior worlds, and in the eager futures encouraged by the creative acts of the Black marvelous. From playing tennis to imagination-arousing dives into the archives, Brandon demonstrates in art and in life that our creative vitality is both clue and key. Whether what we care for and tend to is creative and embodied or esoteric and intellectual, when we turn away from the distorting and extractive spectacle of the contemporary, we make ourselves available to practice devotion to what really brings us alive. Or, in other words, to experience real freedom. I'm Joshua Rivers, and I'm busy being Black with Brandon Taylor. And I just want to say before we begin, thank you, Rosie and Michaela at Dark Matter. It means the world to me to be able to be here, to have this conversation with Brandon, and for a Black-owned marketing agency to be putting on this event with me and Busy Being Black and Brixton House. So thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Joshua Rivers. I'm the creator and host of the award-winning platform and podcast Busy Being Black, which centers and celebrates queer Black creative, cultural, and spiritual vitality. The show started in 2018 and is an ongoing conversation with queer Black, mostly, artists, philosophers, activists, and community organizers about what it means to live and thrive as who we are and without apology. Brandon Taylor is the author of the novels The Late Americans and Real Life, which was shortlisted for the Booker Prize and the National Book Critics Circle John Leonard Prize, and named a New York Times Book Review Editor's Choice and a Science and Literature Selected Title by the National Book Foundation. His collection, Filthy Animals, a U.S. bestseller, was awarded the Story Prize and shortlisted for the Dylan Thomas Prize. His criticism has been published in the New York Times, Book Forum, and the London Review of Books, and in his very popular newsletter, Sweater Weather. Brandon.
It's not sweater weather right now.
Brandon, thank you so much for being here and for allowing me to be your interlocutor for this, your first stop on the UK book tour.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm thrilled to be back. Someone was apologizing for the weather, as Londoners often do. And I was like, no, don't even worry about it. Every time I come to London, it's either a heat wave or the Queen has died. There's always something with the city's always kind of falling apart whenever I visit it. But somehow that feels like part of its charm. I don't love it less for that.
Well, I should tell you that falling apart is full-time.
I knew it.
John Berger described London. He said that every city has a gender and a sex and a personality. And he said London is a teenager and it's never grown up, and it's been a teenager since Dickens. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. This city just refuses to show its face. It's just like, no, you're not going to get the best of me.
It's a very emo city.
It's a very rebellious city. Like, it refuses to be pinned down and known.
Well, actually, I think there's maybe the underbelly of London has probably been properly expunged by now. All the gentrification that's happening here. But for those of you who are born and bred Londoners, I love you and I'm sorry. Yeah. To open all of my conversations on Busy Being Black, Brandon, I ask my guests the same question. How's your heart?
How is my heart? Honestly, it's in a good place right now. I played 2 hours of tennis before I got on a plane to come here to talk about my book. And I was just thinking, sometimes the artist's life can be really humiliating and debilitating and anxiety-inducing, and it can feel like there's not a good reason to wake up in the morning because you can be so lost in the sort of petty minutia of it. And I was just thinking, I was on the cab going over the bridge, and the London Eye was there, and I was like, how lucky am I that I get to sort of talk to people about this weird thing I made up in my room, and I don't know, there's something quite special about getting to share my life with readers and to share that life over this thing that I love so deeply, which is literature and art. And I don't know, I'm feeling really grateful, I guess, which is not an emotion I am typically filled with, but I'm feeling really grateful today.
And is it the tennis practice that helps get you into this particularly open and tender place of gratitude? Like, what helps you ground yourself and orient yourself?
I've been trying to figure this out, and my agent said to me, it's because you get to be a student again. That in tennis, you aren't doing it because you're going to be the next Serena Williams or Roger Federer. You're doing it just to get better at it and to feel yourself get better at it every day. And I do think that it has helped me feel less. I think I take things for granted less now that I'm sort of playing tennis 6 times a week and suffering acutely. And it has given me sort of a new perspective, and I'm able to sort of see things maybe not as cynically as I did before, even like 6 or 7 months ago. And then I'm able to sort of see a thing as good and to sort of appreciate it for what it is in the moment. I think I'm in the moment more now than I was even 6 months ago.
This in the moment presence is unbelievably challenging for me, and it just doesn't come naturally to me. And there's this incredible astrologer on Substack called Farstellar. Are you into astrology?
I have gay friends.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So whether or not you're into it, you're hearing about it.
Yeah. I'm fluent at this point. Yeah.
So my 5th house of creativity and self-expression is ruled by Capricorn, where I have my moon, my emotional life, Neptune, my imagination, and Mars action in Capricorn. And so when having a good time, like being creative for the sake of being creative, is not a thing. It has to plug into some larger narrative. And Farstellar's provocation was, as a 5th house Capricorn moon, can you just make without sharing, just for the sake of it? And I was like, no, challenge not accepted. But I think there's something in the modern experience that has gotten in the way of me creating for the sake of it, and that therefore impacts my mental health in like really tremendously challenging ways. So what helps you like unplug from the digital zeitgeist? What helps you set aside what's happening in the world so that you can drop into, like, do you have systems, people, processes that help remind you what matters?
For me, it's kind of the opposite. I'm not trying to unplug from what's happening in the world. I'm trying to plug back into it because I think, you know, like when you, like I wear a lot of hats. I mean, I'm wearing a hat now, but I wear a lot of hats, and I teach creative writing at NYU. I also teach an LO residency program. I also edit and acquire books, and I'm also trying to write books and to write essays, and I do a lot of different things. And I guess like since my first book came out like 5-6 years ago now, my primary mode of getting through that was just to kind of put my head down and get to work and just sort of like push through. And that the effect of that was that time stopped feeling real, and I stopped being in the world and stopped being in the moment. And what I've had to do, I think like really over the last 6 months especially, is to find a way to sort of set aside all that busyness, which I found taking me out of the world, and to like just be present and to plug into the world so that I could have deep, profound human feelings about the plight of others and like what was actually happening, and that I wasn't sort of rushing to turn things into an abstraction so that I could post about it or write an essay about it or to sort of have my well turned out opinion, but to sort of sit in the sort of mess of the moment was like a thing I had to relearn how to do, because my primary mode of coping had just been like conceal, don't feel, just like get through it. And the way that I sort of ground myself now is that I just go on these like social media fasts. But I got really fed up with it around New Year's, where everybody was like posting their, I don't know what it was about this year that like set me up, but everybody was posting their like top 10 books of the year. Like, these are the best books I read this year. These are the best books I read this year. And I was just like, get a life. And it was that everybody was posting this. It was like a chain reaction. And suddenly they weren't even sharing the books because they had meant something to them. They were sharing the books because that's what everyone else was posting. And they were sort of riding the algorithm. And I was just like, do you even care about books? Like, did these books move you? Like, you're just compiling a list. And I realized that so much of life had become this kind of like spiritual bean counting. And I found it really disgusting. I don't know, like I was really revolted by it, so I deleted all my Instagram posts. I was on a long haul flight to Paris, and I was like lying in like one of those lie flat beds on the plane, in the lie flat seats, and I'm like on my belly, just like deleting the posts one by one. And by the time I had sort of landed, I deleted all my Instagram posts, and I was going to leave it like that. But then I had to promote my book tour for the UK, so I have one Instagram post, and it is that. And it was just because life had become, a kind of spiritual bean counting, where everything was just so that you could post about it or do whatever about it. And I found that kind of abstracting of life to be infecting my own way of living.
Like we're measuring I'm going to say we, because I'm going to assume it's more than just me, but like so much of this experience, particularly as it relates to social media, is that we're now measuring our own creative practice or our own artistic value based on this algorithm writing and this kind of upswell of information. I mean, someone said the other day that Substack has more writers than is sustainable, right? That we actually don't have an audience of people who have the disposable income to actually pay for 20 subscriptions a month, right?
We got to reinvent the magazine. You know what's interesting about Substack? I once read the perfect description of Substack, which is that everybody wants to be a DJ, nobody wants to dance. And Substack is like this, where everybody wants to post, no one wants to read. And I'm just like, yeah.
Why do you think Notes is kicking off in the way it is, right? Because it's this kind of addiction to short form content. And I'm the same, but I'm trying to pull one of the things that's helping me get myself out of the algorithm is like deep dives into the archive. Yeah. So I spent the weekend obsessive. I have ADHD. Like I was in like an obsessive like moment with Julius Eastman for like 72 hours. And for those who don't know, Julius Eastman was a queer black composer in the 1970s whose work was almost completely lost to the world because he was so poorly handled at the time. I'm trying to be generous to people who know him, or know the people who know him. He was so poorly handled at the time that we almost lost his work, and he was 15 years ahead of the post-minimalist classical movement. Like he was doing things that they're still trying to get their head around now. And here was this black man who was absolutely belligerent almost. Like he was he's irreconcilable in death because he didn't make himself available enough in life. Yeah. And to see people try to grapple with his legacy. So I spent more time offline this weekend, as it were, off social media, because I was like looking for Julius Eastman stuff and in this kind of like rabbit holes on YouTube. And I felt some sort of like vivifying effect because of that, right? And then I turned back towards social media yesterday and was the rage that filled me up because one of the first videos I saw was a slave trade reenactment that took place in Accra at the weekend to try to advance a 19-point reparations bill. For listeners, I'm got my fingers doing air quotes. And I was like, oh my God, I need a Julius Eastman because I need to learn how to be a belligerent nigger. And I took to the internet and was like, you need to be a belligerent nigger because this is crazy. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that you're describing is absorption, right? Like being able to become absorbed in something. And I do find that like on social media, that to me is a kind of absorption that ultimately leaves me feeling like enraged, insane, hollow, confused, as opposed to, I think, like a more sustaining or like generative absorption, which makes you want to create art or makes you want to sort of go out and to sort of do something about these things. And I do think that like one of the things social media does is it sort of turns quite serious things into spectacle. And spectacle to me feels, because of the way attention has been reconfigured into like the sacrament of our modern day, like spectacle does feel a bit like the golden calf. Like it does, like there's just something kind of to me insane about what you have just described, a reenactment of a slave trade. Like, because who is that for? Like who and what is that for? I mean, and perhaps there's like a very robust set of reasons for it, but it does feel like it's there to sort of garner attention and to get attention, and to do something with that attention perhaps that is like noble and good, but like fundamentally it is like a sort of attention harvesting operation, because like, you know, I feel like we're in a sort of like post-labor world where it's no longer about your labor, which in itself is an abstraction of like human, like the human being. The battle was lost when capitalism turned human beings into labor, but now we've sort of gone a step further in the abstraction, and now human beings are just like pure attention, and it's like we're all just like these fruits waiting to be juiced into the smoothie of human currency. It's really quite bleak.
And what a vision as well.
But sorry.
No, I mean, it's
I'm a writer.
Yeah, for my sins. But I think it's a really beautiful way to illustrate the importance of the imagination, and our ability to cultivate and tend to our interior worlds. So my introduction to you was, like many people, real life. And in preparing for this interview, I was really struck by the timeline. So I hadn't realized that real life dropped at the beginning of the pandemic. And most of us will remember reading your book during what we might call Black Square Summer, right?
Okay. Can I just say, I listened to a podcast that these two wonderful people did about minor Black figures. And this one person said, one of the hosts said, oh yeah, the summer of Black Squares. And I was like, that's what it was. Yeah. It was the summer of Black Squares. And now you just called it Black Square Summer. Yeah. In America, we don't have this sort of wonderful, I don't know that we call it Black Square Summer. Oh, like to me, you guys have cracked it over here. Like that is what it was. Amazing stuff, Black Squares. I'm gonna internalize that and take it home with me. I was like, if I had had that phrase, my book would have been a better book. No, I would have called it Black Square Summer. Minor Black Squares. Yeah. I might have called it. It's such because it like it. I remember opening Instagram and being like, what is this?
I think what's so interesting for me is. You will have been writing real life in a different universe, and then your book entered into a universe that it was unfamiliar with. Do you see what I'm saying? So we were in the process of being transformed. Yeah, I should say, I always want to add a caveat. We were experiencing something in the so-called global West that people in the global South know intimately. So there was a section of the global population learning about the world that exists for other people. So there we were. And how have you changed as a writer, as an artist, as a human being, Like, what's the difference between the writing of real life and the writing of minor Black figures within you?
Yeah, I mean, it's profoundly different experiences. I wrote real life in 2017, and I was at the tail end of a PhD, and I was getting ready to quit to go be a writer, and I wrote it in sort of one steamy May. But of course, like 2017 in the United States, in the Midwest, we had just had an election in 2016, and you know, for the first time in my life, I mean, I grew up in the rural South. I grew up in Alabama, and so like racism was not a mystery to me. But moving to the Midwest, for the first time, I was like outnumbered, because you know, like Alabama, the South in America, the Southeast especially, it's perhaps the blackest region. It has the largest number of majority Black cities in the country, and the white people there know what Black people are like. They've often been friends with Black people their whole lives. Their grandmothers were raised by Black women. Like, Blackness suffuses this South in a way that like I just didn't understand until I moved to the Midwest, where that is not the case. And suddenly I was dealing with a variety of white people who had never seen a Black person, like had legitimately never been in a classroom with Black people before. And so they were discovering things about themselves at the same time I was discovering things about them. And so in Madison, Wisconsin, in the fall of 2016, someone had started going around campus spray painting white power symbols all over the campus. And I remember sitting down at my chair one day, looking out the window and like seeing like a swastika like spray painted on the building next door to me, and I was just like, these people are wilding, because no one's spray painting swastikas in Alabama. Like, no, we have Confederate flags sold in the drugstore, but like we're not doing swastikas. So it was I was already sort of like having a lot of thoughts about Blackness that I'd never had before, because I'd been in a predominantly Black context, and now I was like in a predominantly white context, and so I was like aware of my own Blackness in a way that it just like had never had to be before. And people kept using this term person of color at me, and I was like, what is this? And so I real life kind of comes out of my desire to kind of understand what it is like to sort of wake up one day and to find yourself in an identity, and to sort of live your own sort of human experience, but to sort of live it within these sort of structural bounds. And I feel like when I was writing that book, I still didn't have like a sort of very robust understanding of the sort of like structures that I was like living in. I was only really beginning to be aware of them. And so it's a sort of naive attempt to sort of write that book. But of course it comes out in Black Square Summer, and suddenly it's a reckoning. And I will say that book accidentally caused an exodus in STEM, like in science, where like a lot of people quit their programs because they read that book, and they come up to me and they say, I quit my program because I read this book. And I was like, I don't know that was the goal. My brother, I left, you have to stay. Like, I'm so sorry. I was the only Black person in my program for 5 years. There were only 108 Black graduate students in all programs and disciplines at UW-Madison out of 10,000. Wow. And like, there's something crazy about when you leave and you look at the census numbers the next year and it's down one, and you know that you were that one. Like I don't know that people can fathom actually like what that is like, to know that your presence or absence in a program actually shows up on the data, because like that's how few people there are.
And I think I never, to your point around the South, I never had to explain my Blackness before Black Square Summer.
They know
it's
what
a really
you are.
Weird thing. Yeah, like my family's from the deep South. My grandfather from Tennessee. My grandparents, both of them, grew up and spent my childhood summers in Texas. Went to high school in Atlanta. Like, but explaining my Blackness was never a thing. I didn't have a problem being Black. I had a problem being gay.
Oh yeah,
that was a different thing.
But even that, like, they find a way to ponder it.
Black people always do. Like that. I think there's a from my experience of Blackness is expansive, capacious understanding, and so other people's experience of Blackness that is confusing to me. I don't get it. But to your point around Madison, like in real life, we don't want to be the singular Negro. Yeah, like that's never been. Being a prized Negro has never been like an aspiration for so many of us. I shouldn't say all of us. For so many of us, that's not been the aspiration. So this idea that we can rebel, refuse, drop out, say, actually, I'm not comfortable being the only one here. I'm not comfortable putting myself through this, actually feels like an empowering case for your art.
But utterly insane. To be clear, at that point in my life, I had never quit anything academically. I was like type A, all A's, had never gotten less than like 100 in a chemistry class in my life.
He's a Gemini, by the way.
Like in school, I don't mess around because it was so clear to me from like the age of 4 that like if I wasn't serious about school, I was never going to sort of leave the farm basically. And so I was like really locked in from a very young age. And then I get to this thing, which is like the culmination in all of my childhood goals and dreams. And I'm here and I'm just like, maybe something else. And that had never occurred to me that I had been allowed to sort of want another thing. Like, so I mean, I would talk to my friends in college, like, you know, like my other queer Black friends in college. I mean, I didn't think of them as my queer Black friends. I thought of them as my friends, but they were queer and Black like me. And they would get C's on exams, and I'm just like, how? I don't know. Is that possible? Like, that's the kind of like all-consuming attention that I gave academia. And then to sort of reach the end of that road and to realize like, oh, actually, maybe this is not for me was like a really harrowing thing. And it, you know, it seems sort of silly now because in retrospect, I'm like 3 months after I left that program, I had a 2-book deal and I was at an elite MFA program. Like it worked out. But at the time I was just like, what am I going to do with my life? I don't even know what one does if not school. I don't know what one does if not whatever. And so that book, I think in another way is like me trying to sort of work through a lot of the sort of personal existential questions I was having. But yeah, it comes out in Black Square Summer and accidentally causes a school to lose like 15% of its Black science students.
Which is just 2 of them apparently.
which was actually a bit of a problem. And then, you know, like a thing happens when you publish a book or like when you make art that then becomes public where suddenly you are aware of a conversation happening around your work and you're aware of the ways that you are being read, both, you know, like correctly you think and incorrectly you think. Mm-hmm. It's all just data, but, you know, you have your own feelings about how you're being read or how you're being interpreted and the things that people project upon you.
And so how did that understanding that finally this kind of introduction to other people engaging with your art in a pretty significant way, how are you controlling for that while writing Minor Black Figures? I mean, particularly considering some of the themes within the novel, the challenge to what Black art and Black artists are supposed to be, the role of faith in our artistic awakenings.
Yeah. I think I just got really fed up. I think there were 2 other books in between Real Life and Minor Black Figures, and by the time I got to Minor Black Figures, I was just like fed up. I was like, you guys have some really boring, insane ideas about what Black art is, what Black art is for. It's the people who are oftentimes like people who are sort of such champions of Black art I found to be almost as reductive as the people who are sort of on the other side of it. And I was just like, can a Negro just like vibe in peace? Like, no. Well, wait, I know. You know, like, can a Negro vibe in peace was the sort of, and then there's all this contemporary art that I just found really ugly and really annoying. So I was like, I want to write a book about this. I'm going to write a book about a guy who's like mad about how ugly this art is. But a thing happens when you write a book, like when you write a novel, that you quickly discover like, oh, actually, you need a dialectic. And like, actually, like, you can't just have a character have these opinions and thoughts that are unchallenged by, you know, alternative modes. And like, maybe that character will learn something about the world that we live in. And because, I mean, as like a sort of conscious Black artist who lives in the world, like, there are definitely days where I'm just like, I just want to vibe in peace. And then there are other days where I'm like, Negro, please, like, you live in the context of all that has come before you, to quote a great scholar, Kamala Harris. You know, like, you live in a context, right? And so writing that book was, I think, like a way of trying to wrestle with similar questions around what is the role of the Black artist? Can the Black artist ever just be, first and foremost, an artist? And also, is there such a thing as a sort of ontologically pure status as artist, right? Or is it always a sort of mediated, constructed thing? And like, what does that look like? And I felt like I had read plenty of books about like artists grappling with like, what does it mean to be an artist and like selling out? But like, none of those books were about Black people. And I do feel like the Black artist in particular in a sort of post-2020 world does have a kind of hyper visibility and a kind of like set of questions put to them that are not put to
100%.
their white peers. And so I had never seen that in a novel before. And so I thought, like, I'm going to give all that drama to like a really prickly, indecisive, ambivalent young man and make a lot of people really mad by talking shit about Kendi Wiley.
No, hey, listen, I agreed with Wyeth on that. And I've actually spoken about this on the podcast before, that who is the hoodie on the horse in Times Square for? Because it's not for the nigger. I can tell you that much. And that
like,
really
what are
pissed
we
me
doing?
off.
Like, what are we doing?
Busy Being Black returns in just a moment.
It just feels like I'm never going to be able to outrun someone else's limited idea of blackness. And I'm getting resentful of feeling the need to. I'm getting resentful. And it makes me frustrated that people lack the desire or the acumen or the whatever to sort of like read me with the same care and rigor that I show other people. And that is bumming me out. And I'm just like, why bother? Like, why bother? Like, it really depresses me.
Welcome back to Busy Being Black. I'm Joshua Rivers, and I'm in conversation with Brandon Taylor at Brixton House Theatre, where we're discussing the life worlds that animate his latest and perhaps final novel, Minor Black Figures. So this is one of my favorite parts of the novel, is this kind of contentious position that Wyatt takes about the black artist. And one of the questions he asks is, could there ever be a painting of a black figure that was not reenacting some gross historical harm? And no, but, you know, it can't. It's impossible. I mean, Legacy Russell is a curator. She wrote Black Meme. She says that every image of blackness is carrying every other image of blackness that came before it, that you can't get away from that. But what does that say about Wyeth or you as Brandon about shirking or embracing responsibility as a black artist? Like, how do you hold the line when you're writing a character like Wyeth while also being a black artist yourself?
Yeah, I mean, Wyeth and I agree about much and disagree about much. I mean, I think he feels much more vexed about it than I do. And maybe part of writing the book was helping me to become less vexed by these things. I mean, I think also, like, sort of go back to your earlier question about the difference between real life and this book. When I was writing real life, it felt impossible to sort of peg that book to a particular time and a place because I wanted it to be, I didn't feel that I had the chops to sort of peg it to a particular time and place. I didn't have the sort of confidence to sort of say that this novel takes place in this time period or whatever, because I didn't want the political to sort of overrun all the other stuff. And whereas with this book, it's like at a very particular time and place, and it sort of gleefully sort of leaps into these sort of political discourses, and that the book can't work without its sort of specific social historical tethering. And that Wyeth as a character, his problems, not to say that like these are new problems, but the particular manifestation of his problems has everything to do with Instagram, 2020, George Floyd, and this procession. So when Wyeth, who's an artist, was in graduate school, there was the procession of dead boys murdered, right? That sort of legion of dead boys who were murdered. And so his classmates are reading and critiquing his art through this lens of, why aren't you making dead boy paintings? And he's like, I just want to do Romero movies, but with black people, like, what's wrong with that project, right? And so the book is socio-historically tethered, right? And I think, like, that's a thing that Wyeth would be very vexed to do. Like, he goes to Central Park to take pictures of these chess guys, not Central Park, Union Square in New York, which is this wonderful place where these, like, basically mostly like older black guys like set up chessboards and like scam finance bros out of their money. He goes to take photos of them, and then like a protest happens for Roe v. Wade, and he goes there because one of his friends is like, you only paint hypothetical black people, you don't paint real black people. And Wyeth is like, I'm going to show you. I'm going to go take some pictures of some real black people and paint them, and that'll fix you. So like Wyatt's project, I think Wyatt's real issue is that he's anxious about getting it wrong. He's anxious about the sort of primacy of black life, and because he knows that black life is such a vexed subject. Whereas I'm just sort of like, yeah, we're going to have the chess guys, we're going to have Wyeth, we're going to have Wyeth's light-skinned friend Bernard, we're going to have all these like quadroon and mulatto jokes in the book. And a way that I think like Wyeth would find that very challenging. And I, as the artist, I'm like, that is the mess of art.
Well, and I'm one of the, I think there's an inherent, I embody a paradox. Like, I am one of the people who is unapologetically Black art, and Black artists should do Black things. And at the same time, you'll hear me say all the time, Kevin Kwashi, Blackness is anti-Black because it's always supposed to tell us something about democracy and freedom and justice. But then I'm going to a Black artist's work and going, what does it say about Black people? You know, like, and I can't help it because I'm interrogating my own work in that way, and I'm also looking at other people's work. But also this idea that I could come to a piece of work without bringing my subjective lived experience is impossible, right? Like, I would be bringing that, which brings me to like the pandemic setting of minor Black figures. So talk to me about so I feel a spiritual attachment to and an archival responsibility for the queer Black literary glitterati of the 80s, Essex Hemphill, Melvin Dixon, Assata Saint. I feel like I'm their nephew, and I'm supposed to help say their name and alert people to the incredible work they did at that time. And so I'm reading page 200 if you are following along. 200 is this kind of heart-wrenching Keating talking about how deaths impacted him and how the deaths during the COVID-19 pandemic altered his faith, like his ability to hold on to what he had previously been able to hold on to. And I'm reading that, and I feel the AIDS crisis. And Pamela Sneed has this incredible poem in which she says that, you know, about COVID, about the connection between COVID-19 and AIDS pandemic, saying that for 40 years, many of us have known that there are 40 or 50 Americas, right? That some of us are going to be decimated and others will have no idea.
Every time we told each other, you're beautiful, you are not wrong. It was resistance when we stood up to the parents and the families and the courts and those that shunned us. It was resistance when we wore what we really wanted to wear. It was resistance when we yelled at the doctors and the drug professionals. It was resistance. And every time we wrote and we read poems, it was resistance. And every time some queer kid stays alive because they saw us, they read us, discovered the archive, we've won every war.
So talk to me about the decision not to name AIDS in minor Black figures and what that says about your power as a world builder to, I don't know, let us show up to the novel with whatever we're carrying.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's conjured in oblique ways, right? Like, one of the sort of central preoccupations of the book is this artist Del Woods, who Wyeth goes on a search for, and you know, he sort of disappeared in the 80s or the 90s. And really, I think, like, you know, there's a moment where someone says, active in the 80s and 90s, and there's like a pause in the novel or in the room where they're all kind of thinking the same thing, right? And Wyeth, for a time, when he's in Madison, Wisconsin, he sort of gets like a cabana boy job, living with like this older gay man who, you know, is immunocompromised, and that guy is absolutely thinking of AIDS. And so, like, there are these moments where it's conjured kind of as a ghost or obliquely. And I think that for Wyeth, who is so far down the rabbit hole of his own sort of like deeply contemporary experience, that for him it does feel distant, except for these like eerie echoes where it comes in, until he begins to sort of like fixate on Del Woods. And he's sort of fixated on this question of like, who is kept, you know, who is the archive for? What does the archive hold? And what kind of gaps, you know, are we comfortable with, and which kinds of lives? And the book turns on this question of like, can you look very deeply and intensely at a life marked insignificant, right? And marked insignificant by whom, and all this other stuff. And it just felt important to me that like, it feel true to a certain kind of contemporary Black gay man's attitude toward AIDS, which is that they often don't think about it, even though in America that population is being decimated. Ongoing, right? The sort of I think it is like the one new maybe there are two populations for whom new infection rates are increasing in the United States, and one of them is like queer Black men, and I think the other one is like Black women, and so it is ongoing, right? Like it's with us all the time. But I think that for Wyeth, it is a bit of like a distant spectrum, because he is the sort of focalizing intelligence of the book. It shows up in the way that it shows up in these kind of blasé, these sort of blasé queer men. But that isn't to say that it isn't there, because if you look, it is so there. It is so totalizing, right?
And it might be that, part of the frustration during the actual COVID-19 pandemic were these kind of lazy connections between the AIDS crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic, but also to this point around the Black artist, like that Wyeth should have to carry that knowledge is me bringing a presumption to Wyeth's political interiority, maybe.
Yeah, but I think like that is
investing him with. Yeah, me kind of pigeonholing him.
I don't know that it's pigeonholing him. I mean, like one might expect him to, but he doesn't. But what does it tell us about him, right? What does it tell us about how he was raised, or the sort of context in which he grew up, right? Like it's an interesting, to me, I'm interested in writing Black characters who are imperfect, right? Who raise uncomfortable questions, because I think it makes some people uncomfortable that like a sort of 30-something Black gay man could go around New York City really blithely not thinking about AIDS. Like I think that that rankles some people. And I'm like, such as they exist. Like I don't know what to tell you. There are a lot of careless people in the world, and some of them are Black, right?
Well, and that we shouldn't all feel obligated to, like, there is also this, I have a contention that, Black people, when we get together, we're not like, how many racisms did you experience today, right? We just talk about life and about our day. And so there's also, I don't want to be accused of like saying Wyeth or Brandon should always be like, what about Black AIDS? Like, that's also counter to what people like Essex Hemphill and Julius Eastman did, which was to vivify and to say this isn't about death, but about life. Like, here's what matters. I mean, Essex has this poem in which he's talking about the two Black bodies sculpted the length of my bed, and the moonlight curious pouring in the window about their peace. I can't think of anything I care more about in this moment. Like, it's just, it fills me with such joy, but also this tremendous sense of grief, right? Yeah. That's all he could think about was this, how important this moment was. So I also have to catch myself and not do the kind of, the wailing and the keening only, right? That so much of this was actually about life and not death.
Yeah. But I kind of love when people I love when people take my characters to task, because I'm just like, they are really imperfect, aren't they? They're so messy. They're so bad. They're such bad advocates for themselves. And I do think that people get really frustrated with them, because they're like, stand up, my brother. And I'm just like, he can't. If he could stand up, he would not be in this situation. He would not be in this moment he is in right now. And
I think that's a great mirror, right? I want to take you, I'm not sure how we're doing on time. Wow, okay.
You're really doing great. You're landing this plane.
Okay. So, I want to, we haven't discussed this, but I want to bring this to you. I was reading some of the reviews of Minor Black Figures. The subtext for me is that Wyeth and maybe you are an uppity nigger. Did you sense that in some of the criticisms that you received of the book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are like, all these ideas. Yeah. It's so intellectual.
Yeah, he's got a really big vocabulary. Do you mean for a nigger? Yeah.
There are so many thoughts in this book. And I was just like, it's a novel. Like, you wouldn't. I was going to say you wouldn't say that about Henry James, but people do say that about Henry James, actually. I mean, like, there is a sense in which people want a certain thing from me, and I think like from my books, and I'm just unable to give it to them. If I could, I would. Maybe actually I wouldn't. But I do think like, yeah, there was a sense in which people were like, why is he trying so hard to be clever? And I was like, I just hate to break it to you, I'm smart. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, that is just my identity. Like, that's how I work. Like, should my work be squishy and mushy and full of bad lines and like no ideas? Should it just be emotional, like sad boy porn. Like, I don't like it. It blows my mind that you could sit down and write a whole novel about the crisis of mediation and the question of the subjectivity of like Black art and Black subjectivity, period. And people are just like, why are there so many thoughts in this? So yeah, it did feel a bit. And then I stopped reading them. I was like, this is not my business. Like, you guys, that's between you and the notebook that you need to keep those thoughts in.
Well, I was interested in this kind of subtext, right? This kind of what I sensed. Again, here I am bringing my Black subjective experience to reading about another Black artist, and like, how do you? I could sense that subtext, and it makes me defiant, right? Like, it makes me want to read more. It makes me want to be more erudite, right? But I'm also conscious that my erudition is sometimes armor. It's mostly armor, and so I'm curious about how, what this kind of subtext of uppity nigger like provokes within you. Let's go this way. You hinted on social media that Minor Black Figures might be your last novel. And so I'm curious about the limitations of the novel as a medium for self-expression, and what is enchanting, enticing you, and maybe ways that surprise you.
About the novel that's enchanting? Or
No,
away from the novel?
Away from the novel. What's kind of snake charming you away from this?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel really bummed out. Like, I think when I published this book, I thought, I've written my best book. I have written my best book, the best book that I know how to write at this moment. And people are mad that there are thoughts in it. And people are mad that the character isn't a perfect Negro. And I was like, we're in 2026, and you still look like you still look to fictional characters, to be perfect thought experiments over whom you can feel a sense of smug superiority because you have agency and they don't, or whatever. And a character who is like sufficiently human shocks and abhors you. And it just, to me, feels like, what is the point then of writing fiction? Like, what is the point of sitting down? It takes a lot of time to write novels, guys. Like, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of energy. And I whenever I finish a book, I'm all on to the next. And I'm just like, every line I wrote, I'm just like, they're just going to be like, why are there thoughts in this?
But you think it says something about like how we're changing as a culture, that a novelist of your stature might feel that your best work isn't good enough because people are looking at are criticizing the humanity you've been able to invest your characters with. Like, does it say something about us as a culture? It
just feels like I'm never gonna be able to outrun someone else's limited idea of Blackness, and I'm getting resentful of feeling the need to. I'm getting resentful, and it makes me frustrated that people don't have the tools, or they lack the desire or the acumen or the whatever to sort of like read me with the same care and rigor that I show other people. And that is bumming me out. And I'm just like, why bother? Like, why bother? Like, it really depresses me. And so, yeah, I mean, when it was time to promote this book over here, like, the reviews were lovely, and I always feel like I get read really well here, in part because there isn't an aversion to seriousness. But even here, it was like, there's so many thoughts in here, and I don't agree with his politics. I was like, great, you should disagree. A novel should have things you disagree with. But it just felt like such a singularly debilitating experience. And I was like, I don't want to do this again. Like, I don't want to write another book where I'm going to be kind of a quarter read, and because the book isn't easy to read because that person wants to get back to TikTok, I'm getting whacked. Like, I'm getting whacked because the book made you read it. And I just remember thinking, like, the editorial process for this book, my agent and editor wanted me to rework the beginning, and they're like, can it just like be a little more in scene sooner? And I was like, it is a novel, they should have to read it. And it just made me crazy. It just made me genuinely crazy. And so I don't know if I'm going to go back again. But I did just start another novel, so who knows? Who knows? But I mean, to sort of answer your question about like what is enticing me away, I am working on a screenplay about Hattie McDaniel, who was the first black person to win an Oscar. And that has been a fascinating, talk about archive, like the Gone with the Wind of it all. And this question of like, what is the story of that woman's life? Is it playing Mammy, or is it all the stuff that she, like what is the story of that life? And thinking very deeply about her life and how to tell it has actually been kind of reinvigorating, because I'm able to sort of take on these questions and I'm able to be as silly, as playful or whatever, and I don't feel as defeated. And part of that is because I have these like really great collaborators I'm working with, but it feels totally different from the novel where like I just know the first and primary reading of whatever novel I'm writing is going to be. How does this fit with the 3 other black novels I have read in my lifetime? Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, I'm over it. I'm over it.
And a screenplay feels like a move to a much more analog but in-person experience, which I think is so fascinating.
Well, I mean, and it's a meta because it's a movie about movie. And it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. And I have a third draft in 2 weeks, but I'm not going to think about that too much. But it is fun to sort of think about it. I'm able to sort of take on these questions in a really formally, really interesting way. And I'm curious how if I do choose to go back to fiction, it will be changed by this contact with writing the screenplay.
I had a conversation with the British fine arts photographer and archivist Ajamu. And for those of you who don't know, Ajamu is one of our titans of British fine arts. And he and Topher Campbell set up the Ruckus Archive, which is Europe's largest archive of queer black ephemeral paraphernalia, and it's just our largest archive in Europe. And it's now led by Topher, but Ajamu and I had this conversation about the archive as a site of pleasure, as this tangible engagement with the past. Topher says, Ajamu says that the flyer touches you back, right? And that ultimately the question that motivates Ajamu is, how do you care for what you say you love? And I just want to offer that to you as we close our conversation. How do you care for Brandon, for what you say you love?
I think I think the book, Minor Black Figures, has like a really beautiful encapsulation of this, which is, Wyeth spends, some say too many pages. He spends many, many pages carefully restoring this lost work by this painter, Delwoods, who may or may not be a major painter. They don't know. He's just some guy. And he pours all of his attention and time and energy into it. He spends all this time cleaning it methodically, rubbing bits of graded eraser, like restores these works. And that to me is like the ultimate act of devotion. And when I think about my own life, and part of why I think I have felt better and healthier and stronger in recent months is because I'm finally paying attention to my life, and I'm pouring a lot of energy and devotion into myself. And I recently discovered that I've been malnourished for like 6 months because I wasn't eating enough, and I wasn't, I just like wasn't consuming enough. Literally, I wasn't consuming enough nutrients, and my doctor kept being like, "You're so healthy," and I'm like, "I have brain fog. I feel weak. I feel tired all the time." And then I Googled and did some Reddit diving, and they're like, "You need vitamins and minerals," and so I started doing that, and I feel so much stronger and present in my body now. And I realized it's because I had slipped into this thing of not paying attention to myself, right? And so I think Wyeth is he's taught me a lot, that boy in Minor Black Figures, but devotion is attention and care. And are you willing to do that slow work of like rubbing the graded eraser into the surface of your life to remove all the shit that's in the way? And I've been, I think, doing that work over the last few months, and it's, I feel better. So I think, that's what I do. I rub the eraser into the things I love to clean them.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
If the interiority and craft of our authors writers and artists stir your imagination to whirling, then I highly recommend a trip up and into the east of England for Mannington Book Bash, one of the UK's most cherished literary gatherings. I had the honor of interviewing the matriarch of the prodigiously talented Canna Masons at Mannington Book Bash 2025, and that conversation follows next week. Busy Being Black is an exploration and expression of queer liveliness, and my guests are those who have learned to live, love, and thrive at the intersection of their identities. Thank you to my friend Lazarus Lynch for creating the ancestral and enlivening Busy Being Black theme music.
I'm so busy being black.